Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So I think that everybody already refresh your body and so on. Okay, in the first very beginning in the morning, we has been presented by many topics, okay? Starting for the promoting peace, practical solution, wealth, well-being, and so on. So it is kind of related with what Professor Stephen Roy will give and deliver his talk. So you will be hearing a presentation from Prof. Dr. Stephen Roy on this very timely subject, but before we get started, may I introduce a brief about Professor Dr. Stephen Roy. He's a graduate of the History and Archaeology Department of the Faculty of Philosophy of Athens University, Greece, and a holder of a PhD in Comparative Ethnology from the Department of Biblical Studies and Near Eastern Culture of Glasgow University, Great Britain. He has taught at the Greek State Open University under the capacity of the authors and critical reader of thought material for the Greek race dispersion through the ages syllabus for mainstream courses of the Greek civilization section. He is also a business English instructor at companies executive seminars and a permanent member of the Glasgow University General Council. Now moving along to our session, please give a big applause and welcome to Professor Stephen Roy, who will be speaking to us entitled Universal Socialization of Humanity and the Fight Against Social Dementia by Means of Civic Education and Enlightenment. Please welcome.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Greetings from both UK and my Glasgow University, as well as Greece, my two homelands. Actually, I'm also, just to make up what my honourable moderator said, I'm also a Glasgow University Biblical Studies Postgraduate Students Committee member, charged with assessing, filing assessments of the postgraduate students there at the university. Right, anyway, I don't know if I consider myself happy or lucky or unlucky for having to address you something like 8 hours after the inception of today's conference. But whatever, anyway. Just let me start by saying that you must have noticed that quite a number of the presenters today were not exactly chartered as philosophers, but they were chartered and qualified as technology people, technology experts, businessmen expert. I'm a historian too. I teach cultural interaction in the Eastern Mediterranean between biblical tribes and Indo-European. So what connects us all is really that we have a sound approach, or at least we do hope we do have sound approach, to problems of daily life. Anybody having a sound, and when I'm saying sound, I mean not so strictly individualistic, but anthropocentric and ecological friendly approach to humanity problems can and have the right to speak as a philosopher. Any discipline and any science, for that matter, whether it's viewed from the university or the daily life point of view, once embracing the two major questions of why and because, then it's automatically associated with philosophy. These two questions embrace everything. Why everything existed, because of this or that. I know that the whys are far outnumber the becauses because we don't have the answers so much. Still, anybody who answers these questions totally and automatically qualifies to theorize about this, because this automatically means that we have to really refer to the beginning of everything. Why we exist, when we existed, to what extent we should fight, what should we fight for, and what finally is worth living for. I'd like to address you with the paper titled Universal Socialization of Humanity and the Fight Against Social Dementia by Means of Civic Education and Enlightenment. Social dementia is what we, in the World Philosophical Forum, view as the major shortage of civic knowledge worldwide, which has led to an almost disastrous situation whereby actually people view themselves only individualistically and not as a whole, as members of a whole and as members of a planet Earth, which should be considered as home for everybody. So by this term, we embrace any kind of shortage of civic knowledge and wisdom, which we do desperately need and which we believe we in the WPF to fight through civic knowledge. Now, let me start. The term socialization as a general social norm refers to the process of rendering individuals gregarious enough to form a peace and general well-being-oriented society. Now, viewing this process, socialization process, in the context of creating a world citizenship, excuse me, that's my alert signal, which I usually put on actually to alert me to my daily routine. So, viewing the socialization process in the context of creating a world citizenship, which is the flagship of a World Philosophical Forum, the main linchpin for shaping the ideal form of such a society globally, one, in other words, which will be fit to live by the World Constitution, forge the universal state of Earth, and be ruled by the Supreme Council of Humanity, as the World Philosophical Forum, henceforward, in my speech, abbreviated to WPF, propounds. Socialization has to be achieved through the adoption and application by each citizen worldwide of wisdom, reason, and morality. Only by means of these principles can a society guard against the onslaught of social justice and equality undermining forces whose sway brings about what the WPF calls social dementia. In other words, a disease most societies suffer heavily from worldwide, and one that is the cause of the most widespread civil strife and long-standing suspension of social progress globally. By social dementia, we refer to that social mentality which sets individual-only prosperity as its foremost goal, cutting down and often dispensing with any keenness on other fellow citizens' well-being, while holding on at the same time to the furtherance of, again, solely individual, materialistic, for the highest part, pleasures, without usually any attention to moderation. This attitude is recognized as the culmination of the agonizing effort to ensure first a respectable job and then one profitable enough to stand up to an ever-demanding life, as well as the cutthroat competition of the individualized countries, of the industrialized countries, and eventually a job-enhanced social position that will excel in that competition, even as it will grant the individual more than their fair share of savoring the amenities of modern life. This attitude, this individualistic attitude was greatly facilitated by the global fast-growing industrialization, which gradually set in motion the profiteering and the hyper-consumerist drives referred to above. The whole attitude first acquired endemic proportions and then blossomed into the modern global pandemic. Now, social dementia impact can be seen on such fields as, first, the uncontrollable, all moral principles defying profiteering, and overall controlled thinking in individual, corporate, and national level, with little or no regard for the impact on other individuals or related peers, an attitude that divides societies, nations, and international links deeply, occasioning wars and regional economic crises. Secondly, the creation of an unremitting drive for partaking in as many material pleasures and practicing as much overconsumption of material goods and services as possible, an approach seen as the easy way to achieve bliss and fulfillment of one's simplistic materialistic desires, nevertheless severely blunting intellectual pursuits and the quest of genuine happiness. Number 3, the unrelenting, overdeveloped industrial countries competition that heavily upsets climatic balance by encumbering Earth's atmosphere as well as soil and water reserves with highly polluting substances. And 4th, the worldwide individual alienation, since most effort to cope with the material wealth amassing attempt is believed to be jeopardized if not done in seclusion or even secrecy to keep potential rivals at bay, an attitude which surreptitiously grows to encase all everyday practices. So just to sum up, over-profiteering, over-consumerism, pollution of the air and upsetting of the climatic balance, and finally, the seclusion voluntarily imposed upon us in order to attend to our needs in secrecy. These are the 4 major components of what we in WPF call social dementia. Now let's see how reason, wisdom, and morality, like I said before, the 3 most important principles highlighting the targets and the prospects of WPF, can fight these 4 fields of social dementia. Uncontrollable profiteering and control seeking with little or no regard for other individuals, like I said before and you heard, is the main reason, one of the main 4 fields of social dementia. Now, reason, supported by historical experience, has shown that unbridled financial profit-reaping and control-seeking tactics inevitably lead to encroaching upon other people's enterprises' rights, and that little or no respect for that brings about their reaction, which takes various forms, either that of formal litigation or that taking law into one's hands in a quasi-vigilante manner. There's hardly a case, statistically and in world history, that over-profiteering to the cost of other people's rights remained unpunished, one way or the other. Some unscrupulous individuals in the corporate or individual level are many times willing to take that risk, hoping to escape their just deserts or reap enough satisfaction until then. Yet they should always be reminded that their greed is unlikely to remain eventually unpunished, since even if they escape the clutches of the law, the crackdown will finally come from their rivals or supposed partners, as human greed always outmatches any sort of cooperation or relationship. Also, what is most important, the eventual wages of human transgression often outweigh the respective wrongdoings. Morality, virtually, is the application, that's the second way of fighting social dementia. In this respect, morality virtually is the application of decency in human relations, which virtually translates into considering others' well-being on a par with ours, at best, or at least understanding that our rights end where another one's start. This means that even if we respect other people's rights and even contribute to their well-being, we are bound to benefit in the short or long run, as they are very likely to reciprocate accordingly. Whereas if they are wronged by us, they will almost probably do to us likewise. It follows that when we are set to wrong other people, we should always ask ourselves the question if we would like to be in their position, in the position of those about to be hard done by. Wisdom, in this case, does not call for highly intellectual analysis. It is reflected in the understanding that unbridled individual profiteering and power-seeking without concern for others' well-being stirs cutthroat competition that poses a threat to social cohesion, which is indispensable for national progress. The latter, once upset, will sooner or later spell trouble for individual profit-making, whereas rivalry, based on rules of fair play, leads to social and national progress, thereby creating conditions that almost contribute always to individual prosperity. Let's see now what reason, wisdom, and morality can do in fighting the drive for experiencing as many material pleasures as possible and for practicing over-consumerism of all kinds of goods and services. Reason and experience dictate that anything practiced without moderation leads to health, economic, social, and national problems. This is because lack of moderation stretches everyone practicing any activity in this way to their limits. as only this principle keeps functions in balance, a state which is indispensable for allowing the various cosmic forces to interact in a positive way. Savoring material pleasures incessantly and over-consuming goods and services likewise finally wears down and eventually destroys biological balance, bringing about illnesses of all kinds and finally irreparable health damage. It also triggers off inflation, which leads to economic recession, familiarizes people to an over-convenient and sluggish way of life, and sets aside intellectual pursuits, as the latter call for special effort that spoils the convenient, comfortable, and bliss-prone way of leaving off the delights of materialistic living. Yet such an approach makes for physically and mentally unfit societies, as physical health favors mental one and vice versa. The ancient Greeks said that you cannot have a sound mind unless you have a sound body. So, such an approach makes for physically and mental unfit societies, as physical health favors, like we said, mental one and vice versa. It also cuts down productivity and blunts the drive to break fresh ground and search ways of solving major social, environmental, and generally civilization-promoted problems, a state which finally spells stagnation and eventually halts human progress. Morality arguments against this approach can be clearly seen to focus on the impact materialistic living has on individual pursuits, already referred to. Leading a life bent upon material pleasures and overconsumption of material goods grows an insidious adversity to intellectual quests, as intellectual quests upset the conveniently acquired delights and bliss of materialistic living. In turn, this materialistic attitude guides societies, nations, and eventually humanity away from progress, as the latter is promoted only through the exploits of the intellect, and such an outcome is the pinnacle of immorality. Second to that, overconsumerism and the exclusive pursuit of material pleasures most often steers individuals towards fraudulent ways of obtaining the financial means to satisfy such an insatiable drive, and that, of course, will eventually generate litigant prosecution and other forms of reaction by the victims, thereby breeding social dissent and even strife. Wisdom should make individuals given to materialistic pursuits realize that living in a material pleasures-only-minded society or world is virtually suicidal, as brushing aside all moral values and restraints in the name of ever-consuming and savoring material pleasures unavoidably undermines health and moral balance, drifting the individual towards their ruin, and of course by causing people's uncontrollable consumerism to overlap, it breeds contrasting interests and sets people against each other. Let's go now to the highly industrialized countries' economic competition, which damages Earth's ecological balance and climate, and check how wisdom, reason, and morality can somehow stave off such a threat. Reason dictates that Earth is our home, and as such it should be treated with respect and great care, its needs being attended to unremittingly. Instead, it is subjected to constant pollution by a wide range of chemical pollutants, while its atmosphere is bombarded by hyper-excessive carbon dioxide emissions from the countless industrial facilities of the world's highly developed countries. While allowances should be made for the unavoidable need to provide for the sustenance and comfort of the planet's near 7 billion strong population, aided highly by the fast-growing informatics literacy, promoting in turn advances in all scholarly and scientific disciplines, a great deal of the planet's pollution and consequent climate aggravation is due to the arms and space projects competition and the all-out bid by the world's leading nations to outpace their rivals in terms of economic development. Now, this latter tendency absurdly overlooks the short and long-run negative, bordering upon the disastrous impact that this economic no-holds-barred rivalry has on the planet's environment and climate. So the message to all those responsible, particularly the world-leading powers, should be clear and imperative. Stop trying to outrival each other in the arms and economic race, or soon there will be hardly anything worth competing for. It is consequently easy to understand morality's huge violation in this case. A vast number of human lives globally, the whole planet's fauna and flora, and the whole range of prospects for human civilization are at stake, if not already undermined, owing to the inexcusable folly of continuing the uncontrollable arms in economic competition that gradually undermines the ecological and climatic balance. It is a despicable offense, to put it mildly, to overlook the huge crime thus committed in the name of earning further honors in the field of economic development and that of arms race, which can always trigger off a global holocaust, intentionally and inadvertently. Wisdom. Wisdom is simply, in this case, the ability of the world powers to wake up to the nightmarish prospect of emerging the winners from their economic rivalry in a world depleted of most of its living beings and material wealth. A world devoid, that is, of those entities that these very superpowers wanted to rule over in the first place. A world least worth living for, or even as a result of the irreversible ravages inflicted upon it by the catastrophic environmental and climatic aggravation. And we come to the last field of social dementia, which is worldwide human alienation, and see how, again, reason, morality, and wisdom can offset their impact on global terms. Common sense and success requirements dictate that discretion, seclusion, and even secrecy are many times prerequisites for accomplishing the goals set at individual, corporate, and national level. Yet the no-strings-attached rivalry in the field of individual and entrepreneurial distinction, as well as profiteering, drifts an awful lot of people into shells of seclusion. Why? Out of fear of their success methods leaking into rival milieus, an attitude that leads often to social estrangement. In other words, I don't want to rub shoulders with somebody else, I don't want to share my secrets of success with somebody else, because I fear that they will pattern their own ways after them and they will finally out-rival me. Given that this attitude has reached by now global proportions, reason dictates that discretion and seclusion should be exercised with caution and moderation and not reach the point of alienating a person in their daily social activities, since this leads to breach of trust and camaraderie and undermines cooperation and friendship. It finally results in a society, this ongoing seclusion and secrecy, with a severe deficit of reliability and with generally brittle ties among citizens, and hence little or no cooperation and reluctance for teamwork. In other words, in a society with severe lack of some of the most important prerequisites for social and even individual progress. Morality, in this respect, suffers as a result of the extreme measures many individuals resort to in their bid to defend their secret strategies for achieving their goals. These measures are actions harmful for those viewed with suspicion. In other words, in their bid to defend their secret success from others, a lot of people tend to harm them in one way or another, undermine them professionally, socially, industrially. These measures are actions harmful for those viewed with suspicion and as potential threats for what it is at stake, and reflect the total lack of trust and the morbid misunderstanding of reality by those obsessed with the fear of their success tactics, becoming known and with shrouding them in secrecy to the point of becoming themselves alienated from their fellow citizens and viewing them as potential enemies. Wisdom, finally, is that valuable faculty which helps such fear-obsessed individuals to distinguish the trustworthy from the unreliable. It can render them capable of understanding that those are testedly able and willing to stand up for them and support them with nothing for them to gain from this stand, while interests of theirs maybe even put at stake by so doing, these are the people to be entrusted with their secrets and relied upon in moments of crisis. In very simple English, we can and should trust those people that experience has proved them capable and worthy of our trust, because they are ready always to stand up for us with nothing to gain in their terms, even if their own interests and their own well-being is at stake. Anyone capable of standing up for us, even though he has nothing to gain, and even though that might end up to jeopardizing his own well-being, should be a friend. In a world riddled with the above manifestations of social dementia, it would be romantic, to say at least, to believe that this paper may change things dramatically. Such a U-turn calls for all those sharing the WPF views, part of which are voiced in this paper, unanimously taking the steps of unremitting education on the above and related principles, and also an all-out fight for their application and vigilance to make sure that they are not relinquished in that very order. It is, however, highly hoped that this paper may wise up people to crucial notions hitherto overlooked or taken too much for granted, and stimulate serious pondering over many of those actions and choices that the world has adopted, even to the point of starting to revise them. One word, our word, has not the luxury of and margin for further stalling for time. You heard before that according to the Atomic Science Committee, there are only 2 minutes historically considered left for the mankind to survive. We must all make our firm stand without delay and try our best to arrest the process of ongoing dementia before it is too late. For matters, after all, relating to the world's destiny, we are all held responsible. So let me just round up this presentation with just 2 or maybe 3 words. We're talking about Hemingway's Eternal Life, For Whom the Bell Tolls. You know, my friend Jeff actually records a conversation about that, didn't we? And we said, if the world's well-being is jeopardized by this or that matter, then we should all make a stand against that. No matter if that danger is a bit or much away from our country. Because if we don't make that stand properly and in good timing, then it'll be too late by the time this danger hits our own doors. And I believe, like we all believe in WPF, that being educated socially, being educated to the point of understanding that well-being is and can never be individualistically viewed, but only commonly, no matter the religion, no matter the culture, no matter the tribe or the race or whatever, is the only guarantee for a world peace. To put it bluntly, Muslims should not look down on Christians because the latter are Christians. Christians should not look down on Muslims because they are so. We are all members and crews of the same boat. And we are all held responsible for making sure that this boat sails safely. Otherwise, any hole punched in that boat will take us down likewise. Muslims, agnostics, Christians, whatever. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Professor Dr. Stephen Roy, please give a big applause. So ladies and gentlemen, so I would like to open the question to the floor. If you have any question to ask Professor Dr. Stephen Roy, so I think that he will be pleased to answer your question. Yeah, please.
Thank you very much, Professor Roy. I thought it is a very courageous paper. In light of to my mind, it challenges the dominant thinking of the day, you know. But my question is, wouldn't you agree that the effects of social dementia that you listed in your paper, the effects of social dementia, basically boils down to the dominant conception of man? So I wonder what is the conception of man that underpins your paper, That's one. Secondly, just the last one is that how do you intend, or how have you been inculcating these principles of reason, wisdom, and morality that you advocate? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. No, I don't believe that social dementia boils down only to misconstruing the role of man. It boils down to misconstruing the balance we think ourselves practicing towards other human beings and the environment. I think social dementia means grossly misconstruing the other people's rights and duties and ours towards them and the environment. I think in this way, and because again, the misconstruction of well-being and happiness, just like previous speaker said very precisely, because we conceive it in our own way, has led to a total misbalance of our duties and our rights. We confuse our duties and rights. We do not recognize that our rights stretch as far as our other people's rights start. And in doing so, we believe that by encroaching upon other people's rights because we are wealthy, or maybe because we come from a richer country, is totally vindicated and justifiable. No, that's wrong. That's wrong. That goes, of course, as my friend said, and thank you for your question, as far as misconstruing other persons, but also do the same with the environment. We believe that because we have to feed no less than maybe 1.5 billion people, we are allowed and justified in polluting the environment with as many pollutants as possible in our bid to create enough means to sustain these people. Wrong. Because by sustaining these people in this way, finally, we'll turn the balance round. We'll turn tip the balance around, because by forcing them to live in this kind of very over poisoned environment, we will finally annul, we will offset the privilege we give them the first right. Yes, we sustain them, we feed them, we dress them. But at the same time, we condemn them to live in an environment which finally will wear them down to the point of extinction. So I believe that dementia in this respect does apply and does embrace the wrong manipulation, the wrong handling of rights and overall policy towards other people. Could you just repeat, please, the second question? Because I'm not quite sure I have it in mind. The second question?
So basically, how do you propose inculcating the principles of wisdom, reason, and morality in the education system?
In the education, yes. Well, obviously, in this respect, I have to share the attitude of those who've taken the floor before me by saying that teaching wisdom, reason, and morality should start at the primary level. Not in the sense of teaching just what classical philosophers said, but making sure that we elicit the practical approach of these teachings to everyday life. Saying, for example, how difficult it could be and how dangerous to allow wrongly construed sense of freedom for those young people. Making clear to them, driving clearly the point across to them that if we allow them to experience as many things as possible in everyday life, would ruin them. We do need to filter the knowledge we wish, and that is really what wisdom should do, so that we give them the idea to understand what is profitable for them and what is not. If we do so, we will wise them up to the dangers at a very early stage and make them capable of fending off these threats later. That kind of wisdom could be incorporated in the so-called social education, and call it in British schools, discipline, which so far embraces only constitutional rights, but that doesn't make much sense, believe me, to primary school kids. We should tell them, you are at this age, be careful because at this age, this or that is dangerous for you. Be careful because viewing other people of different culture and color as dangerous is wrong, because they have the same right as you do. This is wisdom again, and it will somehow gears their morality to an approach that is all human, not all British, all Greek, or Malaysian or something like that. So wisdom and morality really could go hand in hand, and they could possibly steer people to a good direction and a sound direction. Reason, certainly there's no wisdom without reason. If we just combine these three principles in, like I said, social education, starting from the primary level, then try and elicit the ideas and adopt in the more education and more academic way in the junior and senior high, and then in a more specialized way in the university through the such disciplines as pedagogy, philosophy, then we would achieve what is a sort of chain reaction of education starting from the 7th year of age and culminating in the 23rd year by the time they do their master's degrees, and then trigger off, if you like, a sound curiosity and a sound drive to continue with PhDs and things like that. I think that's my idea about your question. Thank you.
Okay. Any other last questions to ask? Please, one question. Oh yeah, please.
Thank you very much for allowing me to come back here to pose question. Professor, you mentioned, you raised three points, reason, wisdom, and morality. I have a problem with this concept. First, getting reason. In Islam, there's a debate between reason and revelation. I think, with due respect, Muslims have yet to resolve the debate or the conflict between reasons and revelation, which should prevail over the other. And then, how do we promote reason, morality, and wisdom in the context of today's world, where we are bombarded with the spirit of relativism? Yeah? Morality is relative, wisdom relative. Again, with the influx of ideas for postmodernism, again, no one can be sure what is reason, what is wisdom, and what is morality. Thank you very much.
Thank you. A very on-spot question, I must say. I'm not the person promptly and distantly qualified to answer as far as the Islamic morality is concerned, because I haven't really espoused this religion, which of course I respect as much as mine, which is Christianity. Let me just give you a very generalized approach to this respect, not just in Islamic religion, because like I said, I'm not an exponent of this religion. I believe that wisdom, reason, and morality always should be viewed as a package deal. One cannot go without the other. I said before, we have to be reasonable in order to be wise. Nobody with lack of reason can be wise, right? When we ask where do we come from, where we go to, what should be our principles, this is reason. Wisdom comes later in our bid to construe what evidence we have and delve even further for further evidence. And morality should come from understanding through wisdom that we are not alone, we should respect each other, all creatures living on earth, and in order to do so, we have to allow them to exercise the right to exercise life and whatever pertains to that, which is the right to sustain themselves. And also, in order to sustain such kind of living, we should respect the environment. That is all I can say about that. Just remember this as a linchpin. Wisdom does not go without morality, morality without wisdom, and wisdom without reason. We are poisoned nowadays in this world by racial sectarianism, profiteering, and I would also say an uncontrollable competition to outrival each other. That is not only a feature of Christian cultures or Muslim, but any culture at all. It is the understanding that the more we earn and the more well-fed we are and the better kind of well-being we are, then the more respect we command. That is wrong. And it is wrong no matter whether Christians or Muslims or agnostics or whatever, because if we lose measure and moderation in trying to outbid others, outrival others, the others will react. I made that clear in my paper. I mean, if I if I undermine the other progress, because I believe that if he reaches my level, then he will jeopardize, my overall well-being will be jeopardized with my salary, so I wanted to oust him out of the company or the university, he will react. And he will harm me later in one way or another, maybe not in my own field, but in his own. He will harm, if not me, maybe my wife, my kid, my sister, my brother. It's human. So the only way to try and keep things in balance is to command enough critical judgment, which again means wisdom, that once such bounds are overstepped, they will be in turn overstepped by the others. It's human reaction. Violence brings violence, right? War brings war, peace brings peace. That's all I can say. I can't go any further because I haven't really studied, like I said before, the Muslim religion. Forgive me about that. But even if I were teaching in a Muslim university, I would again voice these views and I would again stand up for this kind of principles. Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for the question. And then before I pass mic to the MCs, so I would like to thank you for your participation in this forum. I hope you enjoyed the program and I look forward to your participation in future seminar. So finally, on behalf of the WPF Malaysian National Branch, I hope that Prof. Dr. Stephen Roy enjoyed the rest of his time in Malaysia. Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's the end of paper 4, and the end of our convention today. We would like to thank Professor Dr. Stephen Roy, Vice President, World Philosophical Forum, who has presented his thoughts and views in his paper. Many thanks to Dr. Muhammad Saufi bin Cik Rusli from University Malaysia Kelantan as the moderator for this session. As a token of appreciation, we would like to invite Tuan Haji Wan Muhammad bin Wan Ibrahim, Exco, World Philosophical Forum Malaysia National Branch, to deliver the souvenirs. Firstly, please welcome Professor Dr. Stephen Roy, Vice President, World Philosophical Forum, to receive the souvenirs. Next, we call upon Dr. Muhammad Saufi bin Cik Rusli from University Malaysia Kelantan as the moderator for the souvenirs. We would like to thank Tuan Haji Wan Muhammad bin Wan Ibrahim, Exco, World Philosophical Forum Malaysia National Branch.